Well, good morning. It's great to have you here. I love being able to look out and see people sitting here. It makes church more real than just looking into a camera, because church is people. And before I start, I do want to make an announcement, because as you know, a month ago we announced that Pastor Tyler was stepping down from youth ministry. And so we've spent this last month as elders walking through a process and praying and seeking the Lord. And I just want to tell you, and you're the very first to hear, that we have hired Jonathan and Rachel Malamura as our next youth pastors. And so I want Johnny to come on up. And it's interesting in this season with all these changes, but we're really excited about this, and they seem to be pretty passionate about it. So,
I want to say thank you, Pastor Dave, and thank you, elders of Southgate Church, for offering me this role. Rachel and I feel very supported by you guys through this whole process. And I also wanted to take some time, because I think it's important to honor those that have gone before you. So I wanted to take some time to thank Tyler Mothy. He's been so instrumental in my life as a youth leader. When I first started coming to Southgate Youth, he was actually my very first youth leader. And so over the years, it's been great to be led by him and then also lead alongside of him. So I wanted to say thank you, Tyler. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for the time that you've spent serving. He's given me countless opportunities to develop my passion for youth and leadership. And so, thank you again. And to Southgate Church, Rach and I are so excited to be your new youth pastors. We love your kids so much, and we are just excited to continue to see them fall more in love with Jesus, and we're excited for what's to come. Thanks.
Amen. That's great. Thanks. Well, we continue to move forward. It's just exciting. There's good things, and I sure hope they know what they're getting into. I know Tyler's prepared them a little bit, so it's great. I love the song that we sang this morning, Hosanna. And there's lines in there that just continually resonate with me, and I think they resonate with us in what God is calling us to do in this season as a church. And one of the lines is, "Show me how to love like you loved me." And I'll probably refer to that a little bit later, but because I think sometimes we forget that He first loved us. And when we talk about reaching out to our neighbors and touching people's lives, I think when we go into that, sometimes we forget that He first loved us. And then, of course, the song says, "Break my heart for what breaks yours. Everything I am is for your kingdom's cause." And I'll probably refer to that off and on, but we have a video that we've been showing, and we're going to show it again right now.
Well, Southgate Church, as we end this chapter of our family at this facility, I want to share with you a prophetic picture that I had just over a year and a half ago. And I remember so specifically seeing a map of Langley. And on that map of Langley, which was black, there was a bright light. And that light was actually at this address, this facility, at this very place that we are at right now. And as I was looking at that piece of paper that Sunday morning, the light began to grow dim to the point where there was no more light on that map. And I began to ask the Lord, what does this mean? And as that light went black, I actually saw a bunch of other lights begin to light up on that map.
We have played that video for the last number of weeks, and I believe for us as a church, it's a picture of what God is directing us into in this season. And it came out of the passage in Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 to 16 in the Message. And I just love the way Eugene Peterson translate this because it makes it more real to me. And he says this, "Let me tell you why you are here. You're here to be salt seasoning that brings out the God flavors of this earth. If you lose your saltiness, how will people taste godliness? You've lost your usefulness and will end up in the garbage." Here's another way to put it. You're here to be light, bringing out the God colors in the world. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. And if I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. Now that I've put you there on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine. Again, that's the message for us, church, in this season. Shine. Keep open house. Be generous with your lives. By opening up to others, you'll prompt people to open up with God, this generous Father in heaven. If you've known me for any amount of time, you know that I'm a fairly systematic person. I like schedule, I like routine. And as we've walked through this passage, again, I've been doing it systematic. And so last Sunday, I just talked about that one line, God is not a secret to be kept. And, we need to recognize that what we have, that little thing that we said, show me how to love as you first loved me. I mean, that's an amazing thing. That's not a secret. The love of God, the love of Jesus for each of us is not a secret. And so the focus this morning in my being systematic is the line that says, keep open house, be generous with your lives. By opening up to others, you'll prompt people to open up with God, this generous Father in heaven. It doesn't matter how COVID came about, or who started it, or who was to blame. What matters is our response as Jesus followers. And, it's interesting, again, going back to 2 Chronicles, we did a series on this a couple of years ago called Right Response. And in the scriptures, God says this through the prophet, "At times, I might shut up the heavens so that no rain falls, or command grasshoppers to devour your crops, or send plagues among you." And that's where we get this famous line, "Then if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sins and restore their land. My eyes will be open and my ears attentive to every prayer made in this place." Now, I'm not suggesting that God sent COVID, but I do want to say this. I've been doing a little bit of research, and I think this is important. We have a lot of young kids here today. This is important because you're going to look back one day and think about the time when every time you went in a store, you had to put a mask on, or you'll think of a time when maybe the first few weeks of COVID where you had to stay at home and you couldn't go anywhere. You'll for sure remember the fact that you didn't have to go to school for 6 months. All those things you guys will remember. And there's a historian who created this very powerful argument that one of the principal reasons that Christianity grew way back in the Roman days during paganism was because the mercy Christians displayed toward people who physically suffered. And he just says this: Christians met the obligation to care for the sick rather than desert them. Simple provision of food and water will allow people who are temporarily too weak to cope for themselves to recover. And so I actually went through history, and there have been plagues since the very first century all the way into the 20th century, and now here we are in the 21st century. And we talk about plagues, there's pandemics, there's endemics, there's all these different kinds, but the very first one was in 165 AD. And so I just want you kids to know this, that we look through history and we see all of these things and we think, well, that happened back then. But it has happened throughout the history of the world. There have been plagues and pandemics that people have had to respond to. And, I think of the very first one, the population of the world back in about 100, 165. The population of the world was about 250 million people, and about 5 million people died of the very first plague that's recorded. And I went through a ton of them, and one of them some of us older people will remember the Cholera Plague, and that was interesting because there was about 38 million people that died of that plague. Then there was in 1918, the Great Flu endemic, which was known as the Spanish flu. And this is a little funny story, but when COVID first started and I was connecting with other pastors in the city, and I'm kind of known as the old guy because they're all young and I'm older, and we were emailing like, what's your church doing? How are you responding and all this? And one of them emailed me and he says, well, Dave, how did you respond to the Spanish flu back in 1918? And I said, it was way harder then. We didn't have email. We didn't have all of those different ways of communicating. But back in then, they don't know exactly, but between 20 and 40 million people died of the Spanish flu. And so all throughout history, 1957, we have the Asian flu. Wasn't that big, but about 2 million died. And then, we look from 1960s on, we have the HIV pandemic. And over many years, they say there's been about 25 million that people died. And now we come here. So Christians throughout history have had to learn how to respond to these different plagues and these different pandemics. And with coronavirus, as of September, they have 32.5 million confirmed cases. Thousand, could be more, could be less. But there's less than 1 million deaths. There's 100,000 deaths. And so my point is this: what we're going through right now is not any different than what Christians throughout history have had to walk through. One professor of history writes this: we are almost returning to a historical norm for the church. Through human history, plagues and diseases and epidemics have been an absolutely normal feature of life. For those of us who have grown up in the last 100 years, this was something that happened in other eras and in other places. Normality has returned. The church has to deal with what has historically been a normal situation. I find it really interesting as we look at history, and we're so focused right now and on our last 6 months, and yet some of these plagues lasted for 5 years, and they saw millions and millions of people die. And so we're just 6 months, and it's not unnormal. And the thing of it is, with these pandemics, they reveal who we truly are. They reveal how deep our faith is and how much we trust God in the process. They intensify all the natural things of life. They intensify our sense of mortality and frailty. They intensify opportunities to display a lifestyle that's countercultural and a faith that goes beyond, and an unconditional love that can reach people. And so if you want to know how Christianity went from obscurity and a marginal movement way back in the first century up to 300 AD, history will tell you that plagues were a huge factor in the growth of the church. Rodney Stark writes this: the early Christians had more resilience because they had a robust hope in the faiths of death, and they were stronger as communities, forging even closer bonds through the sufferings they'd faced. And I said this last week, but this whole message, our spiritual lives, or the way we live our life with Jesus, is not meant to be a secret, but it's been something where we can share with our culture and with the people around us, the community, even as we did a life group leaders meeting on Thursday, and even in the Trinity, that God had community, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. As Christians, we have community. One author, Lucy Shaw, she's a writer at Regent College, and she teaches on art and spirituality. She writes this: the pace of life and our preoccupations with unimportant things take so much of our attention. The significant things like taking time to developing friendships, reading and praying and listening to God, these all get sacrificed on the altar of good works and Christian busyness. I want to encourage us that in this season, our response should be all about creating space for God and a safe space for others. And so the title of my message is Open House, Open Life. And as we are looking at this and walking through this passage, I feel like now is the season more than ever that we as the church need to begin to step out and reach people and help people. If you look at the plagues throughout history, I love how that one author said it's the reason Christianity grew, it's because Christians displayed great mercy for those people around them that were struggling or sick or had the illness. And the other thing is that there was just an overwhelming, unconditional sense that the people of the Christian faith loved people. And I think sometimes we kind of forget that. There's a little story. It says during World War II, an entire French village risked their lives to welcome and shelter Jews. When the pastor was asked why the village responded as they did, he replied, "I could not bear to be separated from Jesus." Offering the welcome of Jesus to any and to all. I said this earlier, but our world, let me just say, Langley, where you live, your neighborhood, desperately needs safe people and a safe place. And I just thought, let's become God's welcoming arms in what can potentially be a hostile world. And so I want to give you some practical things because we're talking about open house, open lives, and I'm calling it the I factor, although I don't mean I factor in just me and me alone because this is a we factor, but I have 4 eyes. And so that's why I call it the I factor. And honestly, these are just some simple, practical thoughts for you to think about because in that prophetic word that Pastor Chris had, again, as a church, this is a season that we have the greatest opportunity. And again, as you look at history, the church stepped up in those situations just to show mercy and love and to care for people. Simple ways of offering this or offering that. And so my first I is influential. What is your sphere of influence? Who are the people that you have influence with, whether it be your neighborhood, your school, where you work, maybe community sports, although we don't have that many. I know some people, their sphere of influence is the gym they go to, sometimes daily, sometimes 3-4 times a week, could potentially be a coffee shop. And, I think of 1 Chronicles chapter 4 when he prayed the prayer of Jabez, and one of the lines is there, he prayed, "Increase my sphere of influence." I just want to encourage us as a church that we would consider the sphere of influence that we have and think about it. The second I have is intentional. I would encourage you that you would begin to pray about who you would invite. And when I say invite, it's like, oh man, how do we do this? In COVID, where we have to stay within our bubble, we can't have people here and we can't have there. Here's the beauty of a lot of the stuff that we're doing is all online. I was in Home Depot on, a couple of days ago. And I'm walking through Home Depot, and these are not random opportunities, but I ran across a guy who'd come to Southgate for quite a while and then stopped coming. He never made a decision to follow Jesus. And, I hope he's not watching this. So if you are, Peter, forgive me. Anyways, I ran across him in Home Depot, and I just, number one, it was amazing. At my age, I remembered his name. And he was blown away that after a couple, 3 years, I remembered his name. And I said, so have you been going to church? What's going on in your life? We talked about all that kind of stuff. And he's kind of stepped back from faith and even the pursuit of faith. And yet, I just mentioned to him, I said, you know, you can be a part of church online. Everything's online now. And I think sometimes when we think invite, it's like, how do we invite people in our home? Well, I think in some cases you can invite people into your home. But what about inviting people to, join you watching church on a Sunday morning? I hate the expression of watching. I just want to encourage us, let's join together with church. Sometimes the idea of I'll just watch church it's like there it is there, and I can go about my stuff and do my things. But to join with us, even online, and worship with us and participate and pray with us and just have church at home. But, intentionally, I would encourage you to focus on a specific area. So geographical, like where you live. Maybe we talked about this a little bit with life groups, but where you live, maybe life groups can focus on specific geographical areas and just begin to, intentionally go and prayer walk the area. Come up with creative things that you can do. Here's one thing I'd really encourage you with. We're doing the marriage course. And the marriage course, you don't have to go somewhere. We have a couple, Michelle and Rob Thompson, are going to be hosting it, but it's all online. You can do it at home, and you can encourage. I've sent out invitations to numerous people, some that are believers, some that are not. Why don't you take this course? This would be so helpful to you in your marriage in this season. And so people can, no matter who they are, can take it. It's a great opportunity for outreach. But I would encourage you to pray about that. And I have a challenge. I was thinking about this. This may be saying silly to you, but I'm going to start driving past people's houses. We're talking about your house being a lighthouse. Leave your exterior lights on your house for the month of October. Now, everybody in your neighborhood might not mean a thing to them, but I was thinking about it this morning as I left our house, is every time I walk out of my house, or every time I come into my house, I'm going to see my outside lights on, and it's going to remind me that we're asking us as a church to make our houses a lighthouse. And so I'll start doing drive-bys, to see if they got their house. So how else do we know if you're actually listening and paying attention and stepping out? I thought, I have no idea what you're doing at home right now, But I just thought, man, I'm going to drive by your house, and if your outside lights are on, I'll know you paid attention to this message. But it's a simple reminder to you. It might not say anything to your community, but it's a reminder to you that my house in this neighborhood, in this area, this specific place is a lighthouse. And I also want to encourage you in the intentionality of focusing in a small area, that you would start prayer walking your neighborhoods. It's interesting. I look back at the history of Southgate Church and the number of, often, when we first started, we had an office that was 240 square feet. And so it was like this little tiny place, and we put a wall in the middle so that we could have a reception area, and I was tucked into the back corner. So every time at lunch, I would prayer walk different streets all through Brookswood. And I was amazed at the number of people that started attending Southgate Church over those years. And I've said this lots of times, but I would walk by a house, had no idea who lived there, and I'd just say, Lord, bless that family. Lord, help that family. I don't know what's going on there. And we would just do that. And I counted probably after 5 years, 20 families that were coming to our church from all of that region and area. And we don't know what takes place. When we were down at the mall, I would walk out and I would prayer walk, and, there's big apartments and condos and stuff, and I'd pray for them and just, Lord, I don't even know who's there. I don't know what their name is, but God, would you bless them, and God, would you do something to stir their heart? One story, you probably heard me tell this, but walking down 40th Avenue in Brookswood, and I'd walked past the White's house, and they had this ugly orange van. Like it was like a big one, and I didn't know their family. I didn't know anything about them. I just thought, that is an ugly van. Sorry, Mark and Debbie, but I think you agree with me. And so I just say, God, like give them a new van or paint the van or do something. But God just bless that family. I had no idea that they had Emily as a handicapped daughter. I didn't know anything about their family. And it was interesting because a number of years later, they started attending Southgate Church, and God blessed them with a brand new van. And I'm not saying it was just my prayers, because I know they were praying, but what I'm saying to you and to us as a church is we have no idea the power of prayer and what God could do if you just prayer walk around your neighbors' houses. I actually, this morning, had to re-challenge myself, because at home I often would prayer walk and I'd just go up to where the cross is on the corner and go through Campbell Valley Park. And I'm just making a commitment to myself as I'm going to walk the other way and go past all my neighbors and pray over all of their homes. We know them now by name over the years that we've met them and stuff, but just to pray that God would touch them and God would draw them. I think we need to be more intentional about how we do this and how we reach out. And, you know, I think of this passage in 2 Peter 3, and it was, we sang it, break my heart for what breaks yours. And 2 Peter 3:9 says, God isn't late with his promise as some measure lateness. He's restraining himself on account of you, holding back the end because he doesn't want anyone lost. He's giving everyone space and time to change. My third I, I've kind of talked a little bit about this already, is invitational. For us to create an invitational culture, invite people to join your small group. We have small groups. I think we have over 20 small groups. I'd love to see more small groups. And, we kind of get into a mode where, they used to say it this way, us four and no more. We got our group and we got our, we're connected and this is our community, and that's great. But where do we ever make room to draw other people into this community so they can experience that space with safe people and that place in God's place where it's actually safe? We don't have a ton of social events, but youth have the opportunity to invite their friends to youth on Friday nights. Kids, invite your friends to go to Kids Club. I know you got to sign up, but wouldn't it be awesome for Randy and Laura if there's so many kids that they had to start doing it every afternoon after school, and we had to start paying them overtime, and we had to hire more people for kids ministry because you guys are inviting your friends to come to Kids Club because you want your friends to hear the message about Jesus, but also to experience the community that you have. Come on, think about it with youth, same thing. Now, adults, I know that you're all agreeing with me. That's great for the kids. What about us? Why don't we as adults, why are we not more open to inviting people into our small group or, creating opportunities? I just want to encourage you to do that. Our church anniversary is coming up, and you'll be hearing announcements and stuff, and so it'll be a bit of a social event, kind of drive through, walk through, all sorts of things we're kind of planning, but maybe you could bring some friends or neighbors or say, hey, I actually just did this with someone last week. We're going to be doing this thing for our church anniversary, and we're going to have a bit of a barbecue. You can come and kind of see our new location, and why not invite them to that? I think it's just simple things that we'd be invitational. And my last I is imaginative. It doesn't really fit with the L's, but I want to encourage us as a church to be creative, that we would do something different and try something different. Albert Einstein's famous quote, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And I would confess, maybe as a church, we feel like we've been doing the same things over and over again. Our small groups, same thing over and over again. Maybe, just maybe, we need to do some things differently. And bottom line, and I know people don't really enjoy this word, I'm talking about evangelism. Loving others to Jesus in cooperation with the Holy Spirit. Yeah. And all of us have the skills to care about other people, to build relationships and to love them. From the youngest ones that are here to the oldest ones, we can all do this. Here was Tamana and I were at a church in Edmonton for their 10th anniversary, and I'm going to steal what they did, and I haven't figured out how we're going to do this yet, but they had little cards they gave everybody. And on the little card was for your neighbors. And the card said, I'm your neighbor. My name is blah, blah, blah. If you're in need of a hand, I'd like to offer my help. Please let me know if you need help with, and then they gave a list, picking up groceries. Because maybe you can't have people in your house, but you can have an open life and an open house by doing things like this. Maybe they need help running an errand. Maybe it's just taking a letter to the mail. Yes, we still do that. Or maybe it's just simply a friendly phone call. Can you imagine if you walked through your neighborhood and you handed out this card and maybe put your cell number on there or your email and just said, maybe you'd like a friendly phone call. We don't know who the lonely people are in our neighborhoods, and maybe someone's just craving that human connection on phone. Or maybe a simple thing like, is there something I can pray for you for? Little things that I want to encourage us, because when we hear the word evangelism, there's so many images that spring up in our minds. It's like knocking on doors, revival meetings, passing out tracts, the zealous TV preachers. And sometimes when we talk about evangelism, it stirs up emotions of guilt or uneasiness or embarrassment or just plain downright resentment. I know when I first got saved, it was in the 70s, late 70s, there was what they called the I Found It campaign. And before I was a Christian, I would see all these like yellow smiley faces on the back of people's cars, and it said, I found it. And I had no idea what they were talking about. And they were talking about being born again. And you found what? Well, I don't think we need to have all these gimmicks. I think we just need to be people that show care and compassion and mercy to other people and be willing to love them like Jesus first loved us. I'm just going to read a couple of passages here, because I think this whole idea of being imaginative or creative, I think of Jesus when he was with the disciples in Luke chapter 5. He was with them, they were on the boat, and he said to them, he says, launch out into the deep and let your nets down for a catch. And it was like, this was Peter's response. He says, Master, we have worked hard all night and didn't catch a thing. And I think sometimes when we talk about this being a lighthouse or opening up your house or opening up your life, it's like, I've been there, done that, I've tried that, it's not going to work. And yet, Peter says this, we've done, it's like, I've done that. He says, we've been fishing all night. We put our nets down there. We did all these things. We got nothing. I feel like that sometimes in my life. I've been doing these things. I've been trusting God. I've been stepping out, and it's like nothing. But Peter's response was this, but nevertheless, Lord, because you said, because you asked, nevertheless. John chapter 21, verses 5 and 6, Jesus comes up to the disciples, and they're out in the boats, and he says, fellows, have you caught any fish? No, they replied. And he said, throw out your net on the right-hand side of the boat, and you'll get some. And so they did, and they couldn't haul in the net because there were so many fish in it. They tried something different. Jesus simply said, why don't you not do the left side? Why don't you do the right side? And you're thinking, well, our boat's only this big, the fish like... Nevertheless, that's what Jesus said. And the picture that I love there is that the disciples in the boat together cast their net out. It wasn't like one guy standing there throwing the net in, and then they called the other boats. And it's kind of, if you can picture this, they were all in their life group together, and they intentionally cast a different net to a different side. They tried something new. They created something new. And all of a sudden, they began to see it. Come on, if I know you all well enough, I know that you would love to see people come to Jesus. Amen. I just know that. That's our heart. That's my passion. And in this season, people want, vision. Where are we going to build and what's the property? I think our vision needs to be this, they didn't cast the nets by themselves. They did it together, and here's the beauty. Jesus was with them. And then he says to them, he says, come and follow me, and I will make you fishers of people. I talked a little bit about fishing with life groups. I won't get into that. And in Luke 15, what man of you, having 100 sheep, if you lose one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one which is lost until he finds it? And again, it's like, break my heart for what breaks yours. We are in this season, church, that we just need to step out. I need to step out even more, be bolder, because this is a season when people are lonely. This is a season when people need help. This is a season where some people are even sick and not well. And as Christians, we can show the mercy and love of God. I love this story. This is about Evan Roberts. He was the man that was kind of the center of the Welsh revival. And it's written this way. He says, I felt ablaze with a desire to go through the length and breadth of Wales to tell of the Savior. And had it been possible, I was willing to pay God for doing so. He was the man at the center of the Welsh revival back in 1904 and 1905. And this is what he said. He spoke about how the Spirit of God gave him an overwhelming experience of God's love. He was filled with compassion and a desire to tell others about Jesus. And as we're doing this, I have this phrase that we would pray this way, that we would, in our influence, in our invitation, in our imagination, that we would think this way: one neighborhood at a time, one street at a time, one house at a time, one person at a time. Do you know that the great majority of people who come to Christ are brought by ordinary people? Yeah. You and me. Yeah. Our friends, our neighbors, our co-workers and relatives. Ordinary people who take a genuine interest in others, who make a genuine effort to serve them and share their lives and share the gospel. Francis of Assisi says this quote, and sometimes one of his quotes has been misquoted, but I love this one. It is no use walking anywhere to preach unless our walking is our preaching. I want to take time here. I'm going to invite the worship team to come up, and I want us to, as a church, to pray for the lost. I want us to really pray. Acts chapter 1, verse 8 talks about the fact that he has empowered us from on high. And often as charismatics, we're thinking of the gifts of the Spirit, we're thinking of all those things, and yet the Bible says he empowered us from on high to be witnesses for the gospel. And I'm just believing that as we pray, as we seek God for that fresh anointing of the Holy Spirit, that fresh inspiration of the Holy Spirit, even as Evan Roberts says, just that overwhelming experience of God's love. I'm just believing for that for us as a church. We want to reach the lost in our communities, and we want to see them grow and mature in their relationship with Jesus. And I'd say this before we just begin to worship, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to pray. I would love to hear your stories. It doesn't need to be this huge, massive story, but over the last little while, people have been sharing little stories and opportunities. Email them to me, dave@southgatechurch.ca. Email them to me, text them to me. First off, it helps me to know, is this resonating in your heart, and are you stepping out in it? But yeah, I would just encourage you. Let me know. Tell me about the stories of what God is doing by the Holy Spirit in your lives so that we can share it with the church, because it encourages other people. But before I pray, let's spend a little bit just worshiping the Lord.